The Central Club.
What's going on, people? Welcome to the Central Club. This episode is brought to you by the Kinnell Coffee Shop and Sage Precision Hair Care. Today we have a very special guest on, and we are very grateful to have this man on. In the busy schedule this gentleman has, to be able to give us and you viewers the opportunity to find a bit more about him is fantastic. So I'd like to say thank you and welcome Mr. Mark Drakeford.
Welcome on.
Pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. It's very surreal that we got you here. So, you know,
Even the story of how it happened is just like surreal, you know, like I emailed you and then you did like nothing got back to me for 2 days. And the fact that I was just walking down Cathedral Road, popped my head into your garden and saw you. It's just surreal, you know.
No.
It's meant
well,
to
there
be.
we are. Meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. It just
Must have
shows
been
how
meant to be.
genuine, like, you know, you are. And I've seen you a couple of times drive past. The fact that you're in the community or in the area and people can see you is amazing, you know. Like in the busy schedule, like, you know, the fact that...
It's just amazing to be able to, you know, we've seen you out and around. People know who you are. The coronavirus pandemic has just been, you know, crazy for everybody. And you've had the weight of Wales on your shoulders almost. So, you know, people just want to know who you are, basically, Mark. And we want to know who you are because you hear the name Mark Drakeford in the news, you see you on the news, and we just want to get an idea of where you come from and everything about you, basically. So...
You ask away, and I'll do my best.
I think
to answer.
So early life, like, so I come to the understanding you was born in the 50s, West Wales, the lovely town of Carmarthen. What was life like growing up for you?
Yeah, I think it's almost like for anybody. In some ways, it seems like yesterday, and in other ways, it looks like a different world. So yes, I was born in Carmarthen. All my family were around me. I was very lucky in that way, you know, surrounded by people who I knew and they knew you. And it's a bit like that Hillary Clinton book, isn't it? You know, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, Carmarthen was a bit like an extended village. My father always used to say that you couldn't throw a stone in Carmarthen without hitting one of my mother's relatives. And it was like that. One of my grandmothers was one of 21 children.
Wow, that's insane.
So, you know, my family, my childhood was just populated by uncles, aunties, cousins. You know, the house was always, there's always somebody calling in and doing things. So.
And was that the Drakefords?
No, that's my mother's side of the family. We lived back to back with my father's family. So, you know, these are houses with a wall running down between the two gardens. You could literally, you jump over the wall and you'd be in my grandmother's house. So my brother and I, we would spend our time jumping back and forth over the wall, going between the families. But my mother's side, my grandparents were farmers. So a lot of my childhood was spent on the farm. You know, in the school holidays, we would just go and you'd be there for the however many weeks.
Just doing stuff on the farm or on the hay bales,
yeah,
jumping
on the
about.
farms. Yeah, I loved being on the farm. I really did from as young as I can remember.
Plenty of sheep there as well to look after.
Yeah, and an absolutely standard small Welsh mixed farm. You know, cattle, milking, sheep, pigs, everything on the one small farm. So, you know, like lots of people at that time, I heard Welsh around me all the time. My mother never spoke anything but Welsh to her family, but nobody spoke Welsh to me. Because it was still in that sort of era where people believed that, you know, if you wanted to get on, you didn't speak Welsh. English was a language that allowed people. Yeah, I know.
Even in the place where they speak Welsh, it was still that divide.
Yeah. No, so I heard Welsh all the time, and you know, I speak a lot of Welsh now when it comes quite naturally to me because, you know, somewhere when you're 2 and 3 years old and you're hearing it all the time, it picks somewhere in your head, isn't it? But nobody spoke Welsh to me or to my brother. They would always speak English to us because English was the way you got on.
Yes.
So obviously, when you were younger, Welsh speaking, did you go to a Welsh school? And you know, how was school for you around that time? You know.
Well, the secondary school I went to was exactly half and half. Half the people who went there were first language Welsh, and half the people there was first language English. So, you know, on the first day They had assemblies in those days, so everybody would get together. One day it would be in English, the next day it would all be in Welsh. So it was completely bilingual, genuine, naturally and genuinely bilingual in that sort of way. It was a grammar school, and it was an all-boys school, and it's a very bad way to have an education, in my view. I thought so at the
you don't
time.
agree with
Why is that?
same-sex?
Well, I think for young men, at least, single-sex education is not a good idea. I can see the case for it for young women more, but
Why?
because I think that historically, young women in mixed classes tend to not get to the front of the queue because boys are more confident and speak first, and young women, and particularly, as we've read a lot recently about the sort of that low-level sexual harassment that young women find. So I can see the case why young women's education is sometimes better organised that way. I didn't think it was a good way to be brought up as a young man.
You prefer to be in a mixed environment.
I think it was much better. I went to university, and that was the first time that I'd ever been in a genuinely mixed environment.
Did that, was your confidence, would you have, looking back, would you have rather have been in a mix? Would your confidence been a bit more stronger or a bit more out there if you interacted with women earlier on?
I think it's just bound to be good for you, it seems to me, when you're growing up.
Yeah.
Guess you're in touch with your feminine side maybe a little bit more.
Well, and you just, you're just doing things in a way that seems more natural to me than just being segregated in that way. And a grammar school education, for all that in some ways it has thing to be said for it, in other ways it was like being prepared for life in the 1920s.
What? Sorry. Before you went into school, then you say you was on the farms before you went to university. You must have been quite athletic or fit then, doing all the chores. Was you ever into any sports or anything like that?
Well, I loved cricket from the beginning. And my father was very keen on cricket. So, from a young age, he would take me to Swansea, to St Helens, to watch Glamorgan play. So, I've always been interested in sport. But in terms of playing sport, then, playing cricket and playing squash.
Squash.
I learned to play squash when I was still in school a bit, and I still play squash.
It's intense.
I play.
My old man plays.
I stand around on the squash court and wait for the ball to come to me.
Yeah,
that's what I do these days.
They're the best. They're the best squash players though, because they can just hit it. And
We don't move.
You know what I mean? Just
Is that what you use the wall? The wall.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah,
I find
it is,
that
no,
hard.
well, it is. So in the job that I do now, the advantage of it is, cricket is useless, isn't it? Because you've got to give up a whole day.
Hours.
Well,
Standing in a
hours.
field. Yeah.
And, I can never do that. But squash, in an hour, you can go, have a game, be changed and be on your way out. And I do my best to find that hour most weeks.
Were you a bit of a party animal when you were in your, when you were younger, or were you just?
I doubt that was what people would have said. No.
You seem like very prim and proper, like you don't smoke, you don't drink. Like, have you ever done anything wrong?
Oh, God, sure. Many times.
No, it's interesting.
No, you seem like such a genuine, nice guy. Like, I even said this to the guys when I first met you. The way I approached you, just peeping my head into your garden probably wasn't the best way. But you were still so genuine about it, So, yeah.
Look, everybody breaks the law. That is just a fact of the matter.
Yeah.
That just happens in every life. People do that. Some people are fortunate, and that doesn't have awful consequences for them. And some people are less fortunate. I came to Cardiff to be a probation officer, so I spent my life, working with young people, particularly, who had just, done wrong things, and somehow I used to feel often had been unlucky in the way that they'd been responded to. There were better ways they could have had a response that would not have led to even worse things happening in their lives.
Seeing where you, like, once again, we say coming from the rural places to the city, I do see you as a school teacher, and you've worked with probations and whatnot. What was the shock, or was it like a massive eye opener coming, and not even going to like Swansea or Neath or to a town? You come to the capital city of Cardiff from Carmarthen. Like, what was that like in the way of adapting? And
well, I'd been to university and everything by then, so I'd been away from Wales. I was in university in England for 6 years. So
Which one?
I went to university in Kent to start with, and then I was in university in Exeter as well. So Cardiff is a very different place to rural West Wales, but I don't think I was completely unprepared for it. And I've always enjoyed living in Cardiff. It's been-
I believe you did a degree in, was it social work or something like that? Yeah. And you then went on to become a professor. What is it about working with people, and because politics and people is they're kind of two of the similar. They're very similar, aren't they? You're working with people, you're talking to people, you're just trying to connect people together, essentially. So, what is it about that really interested you and wanted you to pursue that?
Well, I genuinely like being with people, which helps, doesn't it? I've taught people who want to be social workers, and I've always thought the one bit of the job I couldn't teach somebody was how to get on with other people. I can teach you to be a better timekeeper. I can teach you to write a better report. I can teach you to make sure that you understand what the law is, but I can't teach you how to do the human side of the job.
The natural.
Yeah, and some people are naturally good at it, and some people struggle with it. And I've always enjoyed that part of the job. And you're right. In some ways, there are similarities with politics, because you've always got to be able to talk to people and get on with people. I switched from doing social work and being probation officer to being more interested in politics, because I worked in Ely here in Cardiff. That's what I came to do, and I worked with young
That's the
people.
place.
Yes, indeed, and I've always loved it. And I've just come from there now. In fact, from doing something in Ely. But this is how it happened. I was working in Ely, and I had this kid, and I went to see him at home with his family, and they lived in a tower block, not a very big tower block, but a block of flats in Ely, and the conditions were awful. When you got inside the door, the damp, you could see the mold on the wall. You could smell the damp in the air. And I did what a social worker or probation officer would do. I wrote to the council, I lobbied on their behalf, and they were moved to somewhere better. There we are, I'd done my job. Then about 6 months later, I ended up with another family in the same block of flats, in the same conditions. So I did the same thing, and again, they got moved somewhere better. And then another few months later, I had a third family there, and I thought to myself, well, this is not the way to change things. This is not the way to deal with it.
Roots of the problem.
No, it's not, is it? What you need to do is to change the system. What is this system that ends up putting family after family into conditions that they've got to be moved from? So that I never ever expected to be involved in standing for election or anything like that. I'd always been interested in politics, and I was a member of the Labour Party before I came to Cardiff. But I never thought of myself as anything other than just an ordinary member of the, and that's what made me think, well, if I want to change the system so I don't get another load of people in this position, you've got to get in there and deal with that. And that's where politics is different. Politics is about people, but it's fundamentally about trying to change systems so that everybody gets a better
not
deal.
just the one person.
Not just the one, no, but everybody else who benefits if you can change the whole system.
What is it about Labour then that you want to? Do you think the few major parties? You've got the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, and what is it about Labour that really is worth representing? What is it that you really want to represent?
For me, it went back to when I was growing up in Carmarthen, because in 1966, when I was 11 years old, Gwynfor Evans was elected as the first ever Plaid Cymru Member of Parliament. So Carmarthen was a sort of hotbed, of nationalism. The school I went to, every single day, the first thing that happened on the day in the morning when you went in was to find the room in which all the road signs that had been stolen overnight were being dumped that day.
That's mad.
Because, it was part of that sort of Welsh language protest against English-only signs, and they would be boys who I would know when we're in the same class who would be out that night making sure they collected a few ready for the day. So, so it was a very political. That's one of the ways in which I wonder whether things are the same now. People on the playground talked about politics, and particularly about Plaid Cymru politics. And by the time I was 14, I remember thinking, you've got to decide here. Either you are persuaded by the sort of nationalist view of the world, or you're a socialist. And I knew quite soon that that the things that working people in Wales have in common with working people in England or Scotland are too important to want to cut yourself off from them. And Labour politics for me is about being on the side of the underdog.
Yeah.
It's about thinking that in this society we're in, lots of people have an unfair set of advantages. You know, they have money in their pocket, they're sent to a school where they meet all the right people and things. And regardless of merit, they're put on one track into life. And there are other people, you know, children who I see now who don't have enough to eat, who don't get a meal until they go into school for breakfast. And no matter how talented they would be, you know, the deal they've had in life stops them from making the most of those talents. And the Labour Party is about trying to make that playing field fairer.
So I guess everyone starts at different positions in life, and your Labour is to sort of try and balance that out and just give everybody a fair opportunity, would you say?
Yeah. And believes in a more equal society. It isn't just about equal opportunity. The gap between the top and the bottom needs to be narrower. Yeah. It's not a healthy society.
Do you reckon it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
It's widening more since the lockdown. Like that's how
it's widened in this country ever since 1976.
Yeah.
In 1976, the United Kingdom was the most equal country in Europe. The gap between the top and bottom was the narrowest of any European country. And the share of national income, as it's called, taken by people who work, was the biggest it's ever been. And then you had the Thatcher years of the 1980s.
Yeah.
And, you know, inequality just massively increased. And, you know, we live today in a far more unequal society. And unequal societies are not good societies.
Why do you reckon that is then?
Why do I think it's happened?
Yeah, like why?
Well, because I think that, you know, people in whose interest it is to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a small number of people have got their hands
greed
on the...
Well,
it's self-interest.
So what do you think of Marxism then? Would you say you're more towards that sort of...
I'm a social democrat myself, in the sort of Scandinavian tradition rather than a sort of Marxist.
Traditional.
Yeah,
Welsh,
you know,
British.
Yeah, no, indeed. You know, radical Welsh socialist tradition is where you would find me. I'm on the left of the Labour Party in that sense, but not in the sense of believing that a Marxist solution would be possible in this country.
So, you know, it's crazy to say, like, you know, that you not fell into it, but you wanted that change. You became First Minister. None of the First Ministers have really been put in the spotlight quite like you, and obviously COVID's been a big part of that. How do you deal? Like, you know, everyone's like always throwing dirt, and someone's got to be in the firing line. But how have you dealt with the lockdown yourself?
Well, the lockdown itself was a challenging experience for everybody, wasn't it? You probably heard this story already. So, you know, I'm living in the house that Tom would have seen me at, and I'm living there with my wife and my mother-in-law, who arrived from Cambridge just a few days before the lockdown started, because we could see, you know, the way things were getting worse. And she's 95 now and was living on her own and very capable of doing all of that. But you could imagine how difficult that would be if she was, you know, in a lockdown. So she came to live with us. My wife is living there. They both got underlying health conditions. They both got letters telling them they should shield and, you know, protect themselves against the virus. And here am I going in and out every day, meeting people every day. You know, I think to myself, I'm a genuine risk to people. And we are lucky that at the bottom of the garden there is it's a granny flat.
An Anderson shelter.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mustn't. You know, it's a perfectly livable place.
Yeah.
We did it up over 10 years ago, thinking that my mother or my wife's mother would end up living with us, and they would be able to live there. It's never been used. You know, it's never been used until then. And so I went and lived out there.
Yeah, even though like you're at the bottom of your garden, so you really couldn't really have that bond or interaction with your missus.
No, it's the strangest thing. You can imagine, you know, we've been married for over 40 years. So so suddenly, we could meet in the garden. We saw each other every day and all of that. But it's a very strange thing not to be in your own house or anything. But nothing, don't want to exaggerate. It has a bathroom, it has a bedroom, it's got a small place where you could cook things if you wanted to. It was fine.
It's not like you're trying to milk it and say, look, I'm suffering.
No.
But
you know.
it's still something. So would you say your wife and your mother-in-law was probably the most people you missed at that time, or was it other people you couldn't see as well? Or?
Yeah, no, you missed lots of people, didn't you? I didn't see my mother for months and months, and she's in her 90s
Wow.
as well. And that's that's hard for me, but I think she missed it.
How was
a
your
lot.
like during this time then? So do you suffer with any mental health yourself? And was it stressful for you? And how was it really for you mentally?
Look, I'm very lucky in that way. I think I'm basically quite resilient, and so long as I get a night's sleep, then I'm generally okay for the next day. And it is stressful. Of course, it is stressful. And of course, you worry a lot about the decisions you make because the impact that these decisions have on people's lives, and livelihoods when you're having to close businesses and things. You think, I know someone, people have put their heart and soul into a business and they've spent a lot of money as well as everything else in building it up, and suddenly you're saying to them, the business has got to close. So you do, of course you worry about that. But the thing that helps me and keeps me going is that the way we work in the Welsh Government is it's a team of people. It isn't just me. All the decisions we make as a cabinet. And every time there's a big decision, we meet. Some days we were meeting, some weeks we were meeting every single day of the week to talk through the hardest decisions, and then you make it as a team. And so for me, that was the biggest strength, really, that I was never on my own doing any of these things.
Were there many arguments, and did you have a lot of disagreements on things?
Yeah, no, of course. These are sometimes these decisions are very finely balanced. There's a lot of arguments on one side and a lot of arguments on the other.
Was there anything in the lockdown of a decision you made which you regret?
The way I put it, is this, that in the state of knowledge we had at the time, we made the best decision we could. Knowing what we know now, I don't think there's any doubt we would have locked down earlier in the very beginning. Because by the time the lockdown happened, the virus was already, spread everywhere, and it was too hard to turn it back. But we didn't know that at the time.
In hindsight, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. So there are things we would have done differently had we known then what we know now.
So upon reflection, would you say that was the only thing that you would say you'd like to change, or is there other significant things that you would like to have changed?
No, I'm sure there would be other things that we would have done differently. We didn't know at the time, for example, or we didn't understand the complete significance of the fact that in care homes, there were a lot of people who work in the care home sector who work in more than one home. The standard pattern in Wales is you have an owner and they'll have 2 or 3 homes.
Yeah.
And the staff they employ work not just in the one, but they work in the other 2 as well. Mm-hmm. And what we didn't realise is that as workers were moving from one place to another, they were quite often taking coronavirus with them.
Wow.
We just weren't as alert in those days as we would have been now. So in the second wave, we were much stricter and worked much more with the sector to try and say, you limit the number of people who come to work here, because the fewer people who are coming in and out, the safer the people in a care home will be.
So with the fire break situation, because you had the first and then the second, what was your initial idea with that fire break, and why do you think it wasn't as successful as you thought it was going to be? Because we went straight into lockdown after that, pretty much.
The reason for doing it was that we were being told by the SAGE, the Scientific Advisory Group. Yeah, you see, Tom. Yeah. The committee named after you, Tom. Is that that when things were going up, the sooner you acted and the more sharply you acted, the better the impact will be. So we were the first part of the United Kingdom to go into the fire break. And we had the shortest period of fire break because we had the deepest period of fire break. We closed more things. We prevented more things happening. So we were able to close down for just 10 days. Actually, everything we thought the lockdown would do, it did. What we didn't know as we came out of it was that the nature of coronavirus itself was changing. But the Kent variant, which we never heard of, was already beginning to make its way across the United Kingdom. So by the time we came out of the fire break, we had suppressed the virus to the extent that we expected to. It worked in that way. But it got worse more quickly than we than we had anticipated, because the Kent variant, transmitting much more quickly and with more serious effects, was already here. And, I used to stare at those figures and think, I just don't understand how things are getting so bad so fast. People must be behaving, in a really reckless way that I hadn't expected. But what was actually happening is that the variant itself was changing. And that was, it was driving those numbers up in a way that we didn't know about.
Wow.
So that's how we ended up, by the time we got to Christmas, we were having to go back into a lockdown. You were asking me earlier, I think, Callum, about hard decisions and difficult decisions. And amongst the most difficult decisions for me was the fact that we ended up closing schools 2 weeks before the Christmas holiday. Because I just know from working in Ely all those years, there are some children who the only Christmas they get is in school.
Yeah.
If they get a Christmas party, it's because it's in school. If they get a Christmas dinner, it's because they get it in school. If they get a Christmas present,
It's from school.
it's because they get it in school, because their own families, just live very difficult, very complicated lives. And at home, those things can't be relied on. And the fact that we ended up closing schools 2 weeks early and those children weren't going to get those things, I think that was one of the nights when I really did go home thinking, gee, what a thing we're having to do here.
Yeah, because I always thought to myself, you're going home at night just thinking, as long as people are safe, I can sleep at night. But there were times like that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, to be honest, because a lot of, on social media, the Christmas lockdown and stuff was a big thing.
Yeah.
It was a roller coaster because there was moments where people would be saying, Drakeford's a legend, we're out, and, and then the next week, everyone's slating
you.
Yeah, of course.
It's, it's all new for all of us, and,
I think the main thing I would say that was the biggest problem, to me, that's how it seemed, was the talk of mental health online and how much mental health was talked about and discussed. And, throughout the lockdown, crime rates decreased because obviously we were locked down, but, you saw drug offences going up. So maybe people were in their houses taking drugs and just trying to escape reality and just trying to do something to sort of block out their mental health. Sure. Upon reflection, is there anything you would have done differently to help support people with mental health better? Or maybe, I
can't think of anything straight away, Tom, that we would have, that we thought, oh, shall we do that? And thought, no. Like lots of things, we were all learning as you go along in a pandemic. And what we were learning is that to meet the different mental health needs that are out there, you had to have a bigger variety of services than we had before, because what suits one person in terms of, attending to their mental health needs doesn't suit other people.
Yeah.
So some people want to talk to somebody and know that they will be talking to them again. They want to build up a relationship with somebody, feel this person knows me, I can go on talking to them next week. Other people want to talk to somebody and know they're never going to need to speak to them again.
Yeah.
They want to tell them things and get things off their chest, knowing that you're never going to have to face this person another time. So what we ended up doing was trying to put a variety of things. Some young people prefer online stuff. They'd rather be doing it, following a course or something like that you can do on your computer. Other people want to be able to speak on somebody on the phone. They want to have a human voice, but they don't necessarily want to be in the same room as them because they can talk more freely or get things off their chest in a different way. So I think what we learned most of all was that you've got to expand the range of ways in which people can choose to get help, because what suits me won't suit Luca, what suits him won't suit you. And, you need to have a variety of things to suit everybody there.
One thing I can say, what you've done during the pandemic, the Welsh government were really brave, bringing in this new medication for drug users, especially opiate users, called Buvidal. And the report I've heard of people is that it's a game changer. And I can say, I can vouch myself, having it, it's turned my life around so much. I'm doing a podcast with you now. Can you give any indication of whether they will be funding this more in the future?
Yes, look, I hope we will be, because you're right. The evidence is that it works. And that's the key test for us in terms of all the things that we provide on the health service, is that we want to put our money into the treatments that do work and actually to do a bit less of the things that don't work.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the sort of less talked about things about the health service that, anything up to 20% of what the health service does actually doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to learn all the time and leave the things that are less effective behind you and put that money instead into the new things that are successful. So, over the years there have been different ways, methadone instead of heroin and so on, and now new forms of treatment that people can take that have a different and hopefully, give them a better chance of getting over what's happened to them.
Yeah. I must acknowledge as well, obviously, Welsh governments do a lot more than other home nations. I think the England and Scotland cut by 50%, and you haven't. So, I must give praise for that. And, but is it more about not just comparing with other countries, but being leaders in things as well?
Look, I've never myself been attracted to the sort of league table approach to devolution. I'm much more attracted to what Bill Clinton used to say about the United States, that he was 50 living laboratories. Different states would try different things, and you could all learn from them because anybody could look and see because it was a live experiment. And that's how I think about devolution, really.
That's what happened with COVID, really.
Yeah, we will try things, and sometimes we will do things well, and other people might want to learn from that. Sometimes Scotland will do something, that's better than what we've got. And it's not a competition. It's not a league table. It's about learning from one another and then taking the learning and trying to apply it in your circumstances and to do better as a result.
It's just added pressure because you've got lives at stake. That's the only thing. That's the difficult thing. Probably, I'd say the pressure is probably more. Rather than just an experiment. Kind of like we need to experiment, but we also need to save lives at the same time.
Yeah, no. In the coronavirus context, of course, that is particularly acute, isn't it? I was probably thinking more of all the other things that we do as governments, where you can have a go at something and learn from one another. You're right, though. Of course, in the coronavirus context, far too many people have lost their lives.
Since we were in lockdown, you can see from the stats that crime rates have gone down. Obviously, I would say that's because we've been in lockdown. So, every other week I'm hearing about like this starving or this whatever. What are you doing to keep it down?
Well, you're right. These are very worrying developments, aren't they? Traditionally, Welsh streets have been very safe streets. Yeah. Now, we know that an awful lot of those stories are in the end drug-related, aren't they?
Yeah, the Engro chats. Yeah,
County
I think that's since that big bust, everything's been heightened, haven't they? So now this dealer wants to so they're at each other's throats, but
sure,
it just feels like boys. We're always hearing about someone getting stabbed from this.
Well, I heard statistics that in 2019, Wales had its highest crime rate since 2005. So before the lockdown, crime rates were high, and then through the lockdown, obviously, what's happened is, like you said, things have been locked down. Coming out of that, do you see numbers, resurfacing and?
Oh, I think lots of crime is opportunistic, as they say, isn't it? The opportunity's there, and somebody will do something because the chance is there. And if you're locked, if you're at home all day, the chance isn't there. So I think there's no doubt that as things reopen, some of those other sorts of crime will begin to increase.
We had a guest on 2 weeks ago, and he was saying, you watch when lockdown comes to an end, unsettled scores, gang warfare, people coming back to sell drugs and stuff. Have you got to worry about that yourself as well?
I think we do need to worry about those things. I don't take quite the same sort of view that when we're already unlocked, aren't we? Compared to what we were back in the start of February, today, we did some focus groups in the Welsh Government a week or so ago. One in North Wales amongst slightly older people, one in South Wales amongst slightly younger people. And unusually, they were saying much the same thing. They were saying, look, schools are open, shops are open, I can go for a drink, I can go for a meal, I can travel anywhere I like in Wales, I can go down the caravan for the weekend if I want to. Most of the things that matter to me the most, I can already do. Yeah, I'd like to do some other things too, but actually, they are slightly at the margin of what matters to me. So
when are they going to start to be released? Do you know?
Well, if we are lucky enough to be able to get over this new variant in the next 4 weeks, then we'll be able to move ahead with some. But we moved ahead with some
Masks
things
and
today,
things like that.
Well, I think mask wearing will be around for quite a long time.
Yes.
I think some people will choose to wear them for years. If you've ever been to Japan, which I have
It's a lot like
once,
that before the coronavirus.
yeah, before coronavirus, I think people wear masks absolutely routinely.
Which is fine. I think it should be a choice. I do.
I hope we'll get to the stage, before long, where it is a choice. But I do think that quite a lot of people will go on choosing them, particularly if you're in crowded indoor areas where there are a lot of other people. Then wearing a mask, we've got used to it.
What do you know? Wearing a mask, is it actually is it healthy to wear a mask all day?
Do you think that, and also how much protection do you really think the mask gives against? Are they really that safe? Do they actually? Is there scientific evidence to say that they're actually really that much more beneficial?
They are a marginal benefit in the list of things that make a difference. It's below social distancing, definitely. It's below making sure that you wash your hands and do all those things. It's below good ventilation, but it does make a small difference. And in coronavirus, all the small differences add up. So that's the case for it. It's not that it's a huge advantage.
I guess you're just trying to.
You're trying to maximise, aren't you? You're trying to do everything you can to maximise your chances that you're not going to catch it from somebody. And wearing a mask is a help. Not a huge help, but it is a help.
Like health hazards, though, from wearing a mask 9 hours a day?
Well, I think, I don't like wearing a mask. My glasses steam up. I can't, I feel like I can't be heard by other people. I'm uncomfortable wearing it. So,
And you mistake a pretty lady with nice eyes when you take it off and the teeth are like that.
Mask fish.
She can make some bad mistakes.
Yeah,
So in that way too.
We were hoping to get him more because we got 15 minutes. Should we just move on to these public questions if that's okay?
Whatever suits you.
The first question is from a girl called Gemma from Phoenix Boxing Club. And she says, boxing and combat sports helps lots of people in the city and across Wales, both physically and mentally. Part of that training includes pad work and sparring. And in English boxing clubs, this is now allowed and competitions can now start up. Why in Wales are we not able to do this, as this has a detrimental effect on grassroots and community boxing?
Because at the moment, the advice we get from our chief medical officer and scientists is that it is too risky. You are inside, you are often in poorly ventilated places, you are getting a lot of exercise, and the more you get exercise, the more you exhale, don't you? You're inevitably, you're panting, you're throwing your breath out. And there are instances around the world where these have been what are called super spreader events, where a lot of people can be infected very quickly.
Yeah.
So at the moment, our advice is that's a step too far. But boxing clubs are back open.
Yeah.
Gyms are back open. It's just that they can't do everything they used to do. As soon as we think it is safe to do it, then we will do it. They can do it in England. But,
let them make the mistake first.
Their rates are much higher than ours, and there's a reason for that.
Okay, that's fair enough. I hope that answered her question.
Sending shots.
Yeah.
I see you, Mark.
This question is from the Welsh shop on Castle Street.
Yep.
And they said, you recently proposed a tourism tax in Wales, but said it could be voluntary. How will that work? Nodding your head there, Mark.
Sorry, you finish
Keep
the
it
question,
going, yeah?
then I'll
okay,
explain.
so they mentioned a tourism tax, but said it could be voluntary. How will that work? And would you consider putting more amenities in the city, as people have quoted in it being embarrassing for tourists to come and ask to use their private toilets?
So the plan is not to make it voluntary, but to give the power to each local authority to decide if they want to introduce a tourism tax.
Councils and...
Yeah, different councils. Because you can imagine, if you were Pembrokeshire Council, the sort of tourism you get there, that's holiday resorts, in that people going for a week or a fortnight. In Cardiff, people come for the weekend.
Yeah.
We have a big tourism market in Cardiff, but it's not people coming to stay and go on the beach. It's people coming to Cardiff because there's a rugby game on, or they want to go to the opera, or there's a gig they want to go to. So the way you would introduce a tourism tax would be different, I think, in different parts of Wales. So we want to give councils the power to introduce it, And part of the reason we want to do it is that even if you added £1 a night, just £1 a night, if you're coming to stay in Cardiff in the Hilton, you earn,
You're
a
not gonna
pound
care
extra
at
on
all.
your bill is not going to make a difference between whether you come or not, I don't think. All those pounds add up and they become a fund that the council can then use to provide those extra facilities.
Yes.
So people visiting, making a contribution to the things that make it worth going to those places
I
in the
think
first place.
what he was saying was like not to wash the tourism out if we just tax them and not, because there are the public toilets in Cardiff being shut. It is very hard to get.
No, I agree. Absolutely, it is.
And I think
but I think the tourism tax would give a fund that you could use to improve those facilities and make it more likely that tourists would come somewhere.
Most definitely.
So for me, it's not a tax about keeping tourists away. It's a tax that asks people to make a very small contribution, and those small contributions add up to a fund that makes a big difference. I went to Amsterdam once. I've only been there once, and I met the...
Wait a minute. Did you have a little chief or did you eat a cake or what?
I did a lot of things while I was in
Red light.
Well, I'm not going to go through them all. But
The red lights.
I met the man who was responsible for introducing the tourism tax in Amsterdam. And I think they've had it for more than 15 years. And he said they had all the same criticisms there. You know, it'll turn tourism away. Nobody will come here again. He said it was the best decision he'd ever made. And B, it was completely untrue. He said the problem in Amsterdam today is still far too many tourists. That city can't cope with them. So it didn't have the downsides, but it did allow them to build up some funds that they could use to improve the facilities for people. So
That's fair enough. Well, I hope that answered his question. Okay, so this is from Holly in Cardiff. And she's part of New Era. I think it's like a music charity or something. But she says, our capital city, Cardiff, is undoubtedly a music city, abundant with talent and diversity. However, it is struggling with ongoing funding cuts in schools, youth clubs, community centres for people to engage in. Do you, the Welsh Government, recognise the wealth of musical talent and around the city and its importance in maintaining the well-being of the community as well as the economy?
sure. Look, when we were talking about growing up in Carmarthen all those years ago, and you were asking me if I was a party animal, had we had a chance, I would have told you what I did spend my time doing, which was doing music. So I was very lucky. You know, Carmarthen had a fantastic music service.
What did you play?
I played the clarinet.
Is it?
Clarinet.
I
You were a party animal.
And I was so lucky, you know, that I spent hours and hours growing up, you know, playing in bands, playing in orchestras, stuff like that. So, yeah, music is a really important part of what we do in Wales. And here are two small answers to that very big question. One is today, in the change we've announced today, we've changed the rules so that small music venues, and Cardiff is full of small music venues, 200, up to 200, they will be able to open again.
Amazing.
Now in a way that they haven't been able to. And secondly, in the election that has just gone, my party, the Labour Party, had a commitment in our manifesto to a new national music service for Wales. And the National Music Service is designed to make sure that young people growing up in different parts of Wales have an equal chance to make use of their musical talents.
Yeah.
And, you know, because councils are under huge pressure and everybody has not enough money to do all the things they want to do, some councils have cut their music service back to the bone, you know, and it's an unfair system now. You know, you could be a very talented young person with music. In this council, you'll still get a lot of help. In the council next door, you'll get almost no help at all. And the National Music Service is designed to make sure there's a fair chance for all young people in Wales who want to do music and have got the talent to do it, to be able to make use of it. So,
Doesn't he
there's
find
a
out
lot.
more about that now? Just search.
yeah, so, you know, the election's only 6 weeks ago, and we're working now on the detail of how to make it happen. It will need money.
Okay.
We have to build the money up over these 5 years and things. But by the end of it, hundreds and hundreds of young people who today don't get the chance because unless the local authority will provide it, they'll never get it from home. You know, that's another unfairness, isn't it? You know, some children are lucky they live in families who, if they want to learn to play the clarinet, you know, their family can afford to allow that to happen.
lessons,
And somebody who might be equally talented
Yeah.
and equally good at it will come from a house where there isn't enough money to go around for basic things, let alone music lessons. So the point of the National Music Service is to try and give particularly those children who, without the help that the music service can give them, would never be able to do things. The help they need.
That's good, that is, and it goes with what you were saying earlier about why you represent.
Yeah,
Labour
no,
and
it's
all that.
it's a genuinely socialist sort of initiative.
Okay, then this question is from Clara in Cardiff. Suicide and self-harm has been established as a major public health concerns and a pandemic in their own right for a long time. Why is it taking COVID-19 pandemic for its intensive strategies to be put in place to support people in crisis?
Well, I suppose I don't probably agree that it has taken COVID-19 to do that. You know, I've been involved in our suicide strategy for many years, the Talk to Me strategy, and, you know, huge efforts have been made. But the person asking the question is right about the nature of the challenge. It's, you know, it's one of those challenges where you need to get under the bonnet of it a bit to understand it. So self-harm is, something that young women are most likely to find themselves doing. Suicide is something that men are more likely to do. And it's men at particular points in their lives. So there are two peaks of suicide in men. One is in early middle age, and that is often people who've got married, who've had children, and that relationship has broken down. And they now find themselves on their own for the first time in a long time.
That's what happened to my friend in lockdown. He killed himself. Similar situation.
Yeah. Well, these are desperate things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're younger and you're in work, then you've got a social network in work. You know, you go out in the night with people who you've been in work with and things. But then you get married and all that sort of, you know, slips away. And then when your marriage breaks up and you're not with your children anymore either, suddenly you're on your own, maybe for the first time in more than 10 years. And a lot of men are not good at finding a way out of that. And, you know, for too many people, it ends up in the despair of suicide. And the other peak is people in their sort of late 70s. And these are people who are widowers. So their wives have died and they're on their own. Women are much better.
Yeah.
Women who are left, they are better at finding other people to talk to.
Because we don't know what to cook our food for us
you
after.
know.
Or watch our...
They pick up the phone, they find somebody else to talk to. It's not easy at all. I'm not saying that.
I think it's that generation as well, though, of that era. Their wives done everything for them.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Suddenly.
I've got no one doing my food on my dish.
no.
You know, you're going to be
And then
hard on
you've
your
got to
own.
make it yourself then.
I remember somebody told me this story not that long ago of going into a house. They were with their friend, and the father was there, and he was in his 70s, and they were going to make a cup of tea, and they said to the father, "Do you take sugar in your tea?" And he said to them, "I don't know." And he didn't know because he'd never made a cup of tea for himself, and his wife always brought it to him.
That's nuts.
Ready stirred, you know. So
That's mad.
you know, so but it's generational,
Yeah.
isn't it? As you say, you know, it's a group of people who grown up in that way. But when they're left, if your wife dies first and your children live away, and you don't have a network of friends to fall back on, then you can find yourself in a very bleak place. It's why things like men in sheds, do you know? You know this, the organisation?
You're in a shed, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Look, Men in Sheds. Yeah,
You'll be on the front page.
It started in Australia. It's a fantastic thing. And we've got them in Cardiff too.
Okay.
So they are like a big shed where people who are good with their hands and like doing things have a place to go where there's equipment for them and things to do, and other people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
And they are a big thing for some men particularly who are not great at finding other networks and other ways of keeping going when difficult things happen in their lives. And that's why we have a second peak of suicide. People in that. So it's, you know, it's quite a complicated and specialist area, and you need to know what you're doing in it to help people in the right way.
Okay, I've got two more for you, Mark, and we will let you go on. This question is from Zach in Cardiff, and he says, what is your opinion on how young people are represented in politics, and what did you think of the London mayor election? A YouTuber named Nico Omilana came fifth as a prank. Is that a good reflection on politics in general, and does that not prove that we're not being reflected right in 2021?
Well, I don't think young people are particularly well reflected in politics, of course. I mean, we are lucky in the Senate. We have people in their 20s in the Senate, as well as people in their 70s. So we do have, I think when you look at the Senate, it looks more like a slice of life than, say, the House of Commons does.
Sorry, but they might be 20, but are they reflected in relatable people in their life as well? Do some of them come from diverse backgrounds?
Yeah, they do. I think of my friend Jack Sargent, who is a Labour.
Jack Sargent.
Jack,
I
he's
love the way you said that.
so Jack is a Labour member. He's in his probably mid-20s.
Okay.
So he was an apprentice in Broughton in Airbus up in North Wales. So he didn't go to university in that conventional way. He came up through the works, and he got involved in the trade union movement, and then he was in the Labour family and all of that, and he ended up being in the. So I don't think he's far off from being that sort of ordinary experience in that way. 16 and 17-year-olds could vote in the Senate election, so that is a chance to try and persuade, get some more young people interested and prepared to put themselves forward. It's not an easy thing to do, I think, when you're of that age. In the London mayoral election, I think the more striking thing was that a serious youth candidate came in fourth and beat some, conventional parties in the process and got a lot of votes. So I think that's more encouraging in a way. That somebody who stood on a youth platform and did it properly and seriously, defeated candidates from much more well-known parties and things. So maybe that's a sign that in a modern way of doing things, with social media and all the other things that get involved in elections, that maybe young people will have more of an impact.
Okay. This is something we do now with all our guests before we go. It's just a couple of what you rather questions.
Oh, right. The hardest question.
They're quick fire as well, so just off the top.
Okay.
So would you rather a United Kingdom or an independent Wales?
I'm in favour of a United Kingdom.
Okay. Was you a Brexit or non-Brexit?
Non-Brexit.
Okay. Rural life or city life?
Oh, that really is hard. Because you want the best of both, don't you?
Yeah.
I suppose if I absolutely had to choose today, I still would choose urban life.
Go on.
I'm too young to retire.
Yeah, you stay in the thick of it. You're a Labour minister. In their time, who was the best, or who would you prefer, Tony Blair or Gordon Brown?
Brown.
Any reasons for that?
Well, mostly because I still work with him. Okay. I was talking to him.
You don't want to upset him.
I was
right?
talking to him just yesterday, so I need to keep.
Yeah. I don't know if you're a fan of this one, but it is the Welsh national sport, so I'm going to say rugby or cricket.
Cricket.
Okay. This is a funny one now. Right? Would you rather have a tattoo of a Welsh dragon on your neck or a daffodil on your bum?
Oh, well, neither is the answer to that. I can tell you.
You have to choose one. If you was on a drunk... Right, I know you don't drink, but...
I actually prefer a daffodil. Where it will end up is a different matter. But if I had to choose between the two...
Well, I got something... Okay. And these two...
I told you these would be the hardest questions.
We say these two to everyone, so if you could explore one of these, which one would it be? Deep sea or deep space?
Deep sea.
And the reason behind that?
I just really like being in the sea. I like swimming in the sea.
Okay.
Nice. A lot. I was brought up near the sea. Cardiff is a seaport.
Yeah.
I think
I wouldn't be swimming at Cardiff Beach.
No, I wouldn't either. But think how lucky we are in Wales. Surrounded.
We're very fortunate.
Sea on three of the four sides, aren't we?
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. One day, when I'm not doing what I'm doing now, I'd really like to walk the coastal path.
That'd be really good.
Right around Wales. So,
do they know how long that would take? Yeah. Would you obviously have to do a couple of days, a couple of weeks with it?
I think it takes weeks, doesn't it? It's 170 odd miles. So I think people who dedicate themselves to doing it can do it in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
I'd probably need 2 years, really. But it would be a wonderful thing to do, wouldn't it? To walk right around
maybe as a fundraiser.
The Welsh coast. Yeah, people do a lot of it as fundraisers.
And if you had two superpowers, one for yourself and one to help everyone, what would they be?
Goodness, that's a really hard question. If it was for other people, what would you wish most for people? I think it is good health, isn't it? I think that's in the end. That surely matters more to anybody than anything.
A lot of people say that one as well.
I think because when you
health is wealth.
when you see people who are not in good health and the struggle that lives can be for them, then I think good health is what I'd wish for other people. What would I like for myself? When I was growing up, I did always want to open the batting for Glamorgan.
Oh, is it?
That
Okay.
is,
That's different.
that is, that's what, if you'd asked me what my ambition was when I was 14, that's what I really would like to have done. I'd like to be good enough.
So you would have,
Dear God.
maybe good enough to play in the Ashes and stuff, and eventually then, Mark, is it? Or was it just because it was Glamorgan?
It was Glamorgan. That's what I'd really would like to have done.
Nice.
Okay,
So
that's
I wanted
good.
to be. Give
Thank
me
you,
that. That
thank
would
you
do
for
for me.
answering that.
Yeah.
Nice that it's
Wales,
simple.
Wales are playing in the Euros now.
Yes.
We had a good game the other day.
Indeed.
If we won the World Cup, if we got to win the Euros, which is very unlikely, could you promise you would do something like a bit? Would you come around here and watch along of the final with us?
Oh wow.
Yeah, we'd love you too.
Okay. If we're in the final,
Yeah.
invite me here, and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, we'll just
I
watch it
can't
together.
promise that I won't be there. Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
watching it
Well, I
myself.
don't think you should have just said yeah, because we're not going to make the final.
I didn't think it's a free hit. You think that?
Before we go, Mark, I'm so glad you said you like daffodils. We went and got you a present. We did for taking your time.
Yeah,
you shouldn't
yeah,
have
yeah.
done.
From the
You
Welsh
shouldn't.
half-craft shops. If you want to have a look at that.
There we are. That's from the Central Club.
Well, thank you very much. You shouldn't have done. But,
If you want to
it's a
go and
very
open it
nice-
up to show the camera now, because I was...
Indeed. Now, where do I need to show the camera to that side?
You have to
there?
unravel it.
Okay, I'm in here now.
But
So, this is, I think I know by now, that this is a traditional Welsh carved love spoon,
yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
which are wonderful things.
Ready for Amsterdam.
spoon in love.
Tom, you need to behave yourself, Tom. I can see. That's, anyway, look, it's lovely, isn't it?
It's a
And
daffodil as well.
It is a daffodil, which is brilliant.
Oh,
Well, look, thank you very much indeed. You shouldn't have done, but it's
Well, it was
very
46
nice
quid
indeed.
if you could give me the money back.
That's a lot of carving.
Yeah. Just make good use
Yeah,
of
we
But they are wonderful things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I chose that one because I was going to get a dragon, but when you said daffodil, you just
Yeah, that's
You've
it.
got the right one there.
daffodil on your bum, daffodil.
Oh, thank you
Daffodil
very
on the
much
wall.
indeed.
No, thank you very much, Mark. I
No,
really
pleasure.
appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, it's been
Enjoyed
brilliant.
it
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
The Central Club.